What can we do to combat climate change? Did you know that climate change is likely to be the greatest threat of the 21st century? It's time to wake up. The Earth is consistently warming up. The reason is the growth in greenhouse gases of human origin, which has led to the beginnings of health, ecological, and humanitarian catastrophes. So, what can be done to combat climate change? What does climate change mean? What are the causes and effects of climate change? Finally, what alternatives are there? Well, all these questions will be addressed in this video, so let's explore. What is climate change exactly? Climate change, sometimes known as climate transformation, is the term used to describe changes in the planet's typical climate, in terms of temperature, precipitation, and wind, which are mostly brought on by human activity. The sustainability of the planet's ecosystems, the future of humanity, and the stability of the global economy are all at risk as a result of the unbalanced weather on Earth. Time to think and act. One of the most pressing and challenging issues of our day is climate change. We must drastically reduce our net carbon dioxide (CO2) emissions while supporting a growing population if we are to protect the environment of our planet. The issue's reality is now largely uncontested, but how to address it is still up for discussion. Some people think we only need to learn how to consume less. Others think that the issue can be solved solely through technological innovation. Can the inventiveness and creativity of humans, however, actually preserve the world? It's time to think and act wisely before it's way too late, because this may be a devastation for the world. The consequences of climate change. We now have a better understanding of the effects of this phenomenon on our lives thanks to the work of the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, and other scientific teams working on the concept of climate change. Many people believe that climate change is merely a problem that will get hotter in the distant future. However, the effects are much more severe and need to be treated properly. A rise in temperature brought on by global warming has the potential to have an impact on the entire ecosystem of the world, not just the heat that humans can feel or the melting of glaciers. The weather is becoming disruptive, as we have seen in other nations, including South Africa, India, and the US. The frequency and patterns of extreme weather events are increasing. They are also becoming more intense, aggressive, and energetic. This predicts an increase in storms, floods, cyclones, and droughts during the coming years. At the same time, rising temperatures are also having an impact on the sea's ability to regulate themselves. Ocean levels will rise if global temperatures rise sharply, but they will also face the ecological difficulties of ocean acidification and deoxygenation. Forest areas, like the Amazon rainforest, delicate ecosystems, like coral reefs, and biodiversity, including corals, insects, and mammals, are all at risk at the same time. In addition, the effects of climate change are currently problematic and could become far more so. The flow of climate refugees is changing and growing as a result of rising temperatures in some nations, particularly in equatorial regions, which puts pressure on other nations to take them in, support them in their efforts, and remove political obstacles. The reasons for this change have to do with natural resources, such as drinking water, that are becoming more scarce, and numerous crops and livestock that are unlikely to survive in certain locations because of the temperature being too hot, too dry, too cold, or too wet, affecting locals as well as the global economy of the several industries that rely on raw materials, for instance, beverage, energy, commercial fishing, and the list goes on. In fact, research indicates that if global average surface temperatures rise to between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius, the wealthiest nations will experience fewer changes in their local climate than the poorest ones. Why is it necessary to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius versus higher levels? It will be easier to adjust. Our world will see fewer negative effects from extreme events in terms of intensity and frequency, as well as on resources, ecosystems, biodiversity, food security, cities, tourism, and carbon removal. Before we move on, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon for more. How to fight climate change. Now, you must be thinking if there is any way out. All of us must first cut back on our emissions of greenhouse gases to combat climate change. The first step towards achieving this is to embrace renewable energy sources that replenish spontaneously over time, such as sunshine, wind, rain, tides, waves, and geothermal heat, and to refrain from producing energy through the burning of fossil fuels. Additionally, in addition to changing the energy sources we use, we must also increase efficiency across the board because even energy derived from renewable resources won't be carbon neutral and will still deplete the ozone layer. To face these increasing obstacles that climate change is bringing, we must modify our way of life. For this to occur, we must begin to establish a global culture of sustainable development, one that prioritizes the effective and sensible use of energy, the circular economy as a viable option, and the production of long-lasting, environmentally friendly goods. There is no doubt that we must make wise product decisions because what we as customers demand affects what is made available to us. The effective solutions. Even though there is a lot that needs to be fixed regarding the climate change issue, there are some effective solutions to speed up the entire process and at least prevent any dangerous climate situation. Improving the efficiency. It would be difficult to meet the emissions objectives to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius without making swift and large changes to the energy, land, and urban infrastructure, including transportation and buildings and industrial sectors. Turning down our thermostats, purchasing food from local suppliers, flying less, and increasing our walking and cycling are all ways that consumers may help reduce carbon-intensive behavior. However, such behavioral change takes time and depends on a complex interaction of forces, especially on a worldwide scale. Our individual efforts may seem insignificant. Making the best decisions in a convoluted and opaque system is challenging for even the most well-intentioned consumer. In addition, not all consumers have the luxury of scrutinizing their own supply chains. How therefore can we make sure that our emissions are reduced even while our consumption increases? Is invention the solution? There is no shortage of examples of human inventiveness at work in the fight against climate change. For example, before a product, like a car, is sold, the production process already has a substantial environmental impact. There is a lot of room to lessen that negative impact on the environment. Forgo fossil fuel. The first challenge is to phase out the use of coal, oil, and, eventually, natural gas. This is perhaps the most difficult challenge because people in richer countries literally eat, wear, work, play, and even sleep on products made from fossilized sunlight. There are no perfect solutions to reducing reliance on fossil fuels. For example, carbon-neutral biofuels can raise food prices and cause forest destruction, and while nuclear power does not emit greenhouse gases, it does produce radioactive waste. However, every bit counts. So, whenever possible, use alternatives such as plant-derived plastics, biodiesel, and wind power, and invest in the change, whether by divesting from oil stocks or investing in companies that practice carbon capture and storage. Infrastructure improvements. Around one-third of the world's greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to buildings, 43% in the United States alone, even though long-term savings can be realized by investing in stronger insulation and other affordable, temperature-regulating measures. Power needs are increasing even though electric systems are already full or overwhelmed. Even the most fuel-efficient car can have its fuel economy reduced by terrible roads. It might be possible to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and stimulate economic growth in developing nations by investing in new infrastructure or drastically enhancing current roads and transmission lines. On the other hand, greenhouse gas emissions might be reduced in the developed world and avoided in the developing world with the help of energy-efficient structures and improved cement manufacturing techniques such as using alternative fuels to heat the kiln. Consume less. Simply buying fewer items is the simplest approach to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Through reducing consumption, less fossil fuel is needed to extract, produce, and move goods around the world, whether it be by giving up driving or using a reusable grocery bag. When buying, keep the environment in mind. Consider purchasing the car that will last the longest and have the least negative effects on the environment if you're in the market for a new vehicle. Therefore, a used automobile with a hybrid powertrain provides better long-term fuel efficiency while reducing the environmental impact of new car manufacturing. And yes, electric cars are a big hit because there is no environmental pollution and it helps prevent the climate from any disruptive changes. Shopping in bulk can reduce the quantity of packaging, plastic wrap, and cardboard boxes when buying necessities like groceries. Sometimes buying more means consuming less. Stop cutting trees. 33 million acres of wood are cleared each year. Just the tropics timber harvesting adds 1.5 billion metric tons of carbon to the sky. That accounts for 20% of greenhouse gas emissions caused by human activity and is an easy source to avoid. This sizable portion of emissions might be quickly eliminated through improved farming practices, paper recycling, and forest management that balances the amount of wood harvested with the amount of new tree sprouting. Additionally, when buying wood products like flooring or furniture, try to buy old items if possible. If that's not an option, look for wood that has been sustainably sourced. Not only are the Amazon and other forests the Earth's lungs, but they may also be humanity's best immediate hope for curbing global warming. The stumbling blocks of climate change. Gaps in capacity. Organizations frequently lack the resources, financial, technical, and human, to prepare for a complicated and divisive problem like adapting to climate change. They also have a lot of conflicting challenges that can take precedence right away. As a result, organizations lack the resources necessary to carry out a thorough adaptation program from design to implementation. For a company, there can be a shortage of resources or industry adaptation advocates. Uncertainty regarding the dangers. Although there is general agreement that the climate is changing, the size of these changes is uncertain. Although scientific understanding will advance, we will never have accurate projections of the scope and timing of climate threats, similar to many other forms of risks. Limited local knowledge. Lack of technical know-how to assess climate change estimates for the local area may exacerbate a lack of locally pertinent and useful information regarding future climate impacts. At best, this could entail hiring consultants to assist with planning. At worst, preparation could stop and little to no adaptation would occur. Institutional and regulatory structures. To further adapt, local governments need the state government's strong and unambiguous support, and this lack of support is a roadblock to action. Legal ambiguity. Councils have expressed a serious worry about the potential of legal liability and the uncertainty of what is legally justifiable in relation to the sea level rise issue. To sum up, in our contemporary society, the value of teaching others about climate change cannot be understated. We can quickly distribute our message through the use of a variety of platforms. There are always methods to inform people about what climate change is doing to our planet, whether you do it through word of mouth or social media. By teaching others on the risks posed by climate change and what they can do to combat it, you may contribute to the preservation of the environment. That said, it's time to act now and be responsible to play our part in combating climate change. What do you think about this? Comment down. Share this video with everyone to create awareness and reach the masses. Stay tuned for more.